Hi and welcome to Curtis Stage Tutorials. This tutorial is on drop-down menus using CSS in Dreamweaver. Alright, so essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make this a drop-down menu that looks like this. It's going to be a horizontal menu, and then it's going to have a drop-down that has kind of buttons coming out the side. Highly modifiable, easy to add more items and change things about this when we're done. So here we go. So what I want to do is I want to go to Dreamweaver and I'm going to open up a new file so that I'm starting a fresh document here. I'm going to open up a new HTML, one column fixed centered, and click Create. The first thing I want to do is get rid of all of this text that's inside this content div, erase all that out, and I'm going to expand my container out just a little bit on its height so we're not seeing the whole white background, or we're seeing a white background here. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to go into Code View. So once I'm in Code View, we're going to add a div inside content. So I'm going to erase the H1 tag. Right here you see the H1 tag. I'm just going to get rid of that, hit delete on my keyboard, and I'm going to add this nav bar inside my content. I could actually add the nav bar anywhere I want. I could add it anywhere inside the container. I could put it above the content. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to put it inside the content. So let's create this div ID that is a nav. So I want to essentially start it off with a bracket facing the right, div space ID. Got to have the equals sign there, div ID equals, and then I'm going to do quotation marks. I'm going to make up a name here. Nav is a good name to name a nav bar. Just means navigational structure, navigational bar. You can name it whatever you want here, but I'm going to just keep it short and name it nav. So div ID equals nav, and then I've got to close this opening tag. So this is the opening part of the tag. I've got to close this off with a bracket facing to the right. Now while I'm here, I want to close this div tag itself. So I'm going to do a bracket facing to the right and a slash, and that'll close down this div, and I'm going to add some space in here. So I put my cursor in between these two brackets, and I'm going to hit return a few times and add some white space there. This is where I'm going to create an unordered list. Unordered list is a UL. That's the tag name for it, UL. And the unordered list is the only way that I can create a list. So we want to have a list, we want to have links that are a list. So the first thing I want to do is create an unordered list. So that's a UL. So let's do that here. Let's create the UL. I'm going to do a bracket facing to the right with a UL, and then bracket facing to the left to close that opening tag off. And then while I'm here, I'm going to make the closing tag for the UL. I'm going to give it some white space because the list is going to go inside this UL. So let's make the list in here. A list is LI, so I want to have a bracket facing to the right, and then an LI. And the very first thing I want to do in here is maybe do a home button. So HOME, and then I'm going to do a bracket facing to the right to close this tag. And when I put my slash in there, Dreamweaver automatically closed the tag as soon as I put the slash there. So I've got the first item in the list, and if I go to Design View, you'll see I've got a home button. All right, I'm going to go back to Code View, and I'm going to copy this and add a couple more here. So Command C on a Mac, and I'm going to hit Return. Command V on a Mac, and it's Control C and Control V on a PC. And let's hit Return and do another one. And maybe I'll give this a name here like About. So this one would be About Me here. And right in here, I would call this Portfolio. So I've got a list that looks like that so far. And it's vertical at this point. We're going to make it horizontal in a bit. But let's kind of just keep going with this structure in the HTML area, and we'll do the CSS part in a second. So we've got this list here, and now I want to, and I'll create links here in a second, but what we essentially want to do is we want to have now a sub list off of this list. So essentially we want to create another UL inside coming off of Portfolio. So let's make another UL here. So let's first make the UL. I'm going to make a curly bracket facing this way, UL, and then I'm going to do the closing UL. So I always kind of do the opening and closing tags at the start so I don't forget them. So I'm going to give some white space to that. You notice how I just I hit return on my keyboard a few times. And let's make another list here. I'm just going to take all three of these and copy them. Command C, and go down here, Command V. And let's make this one, I'll say, this is my portfolio, so maybe let's say web items, and maybe print items, and what else would I have in a portfolio? Maybe I would have just regular kind of pics. So let's see, something like that. Okay, so now I've got two lists here, you can see, but really I want this pics, print, and web to be a subcategory of portfolio. Again, we want it to look like this eventually. We want it to look like a pull-out menu like that. So I want this to be a subcategory of portfolio. So let's go back and look at that code again. You'll notice that, here, I'm going to delete these ULs back up, just kind of bring them back up here so that I don't need this much space right here. Now, essentially what I want to do is, bringing all those back up, is I want to have these three items inside this last list item. So what I'm going to do is take off the closing list tag on portfolio. Command X, close that. That's the closing list item. I'm going to put it after this UL. So it's going to go after this one. So I'm going to paste it there. And that way, web, print, and pics is actually inside the list of portfolio. So all of this right here, this whole UL right here, this unordered list with the list inside it, is embedded or nested, that would be the better word, inside portfolio. Okay, it's not going to look like that right now, but you'll probably see bullet points, bigger bullet points with an unordered list on the top three, and then you'll see smaller bullet points here for the bottom three. All right, let's go back to code view. So we've basically got our basic structure up here, but let's make some web links here, some A tags, some link tags. So let's make our A tags, our anchors. So I'm going to do a bracket facing to the right with an A space href, that's hypertext reference. And for right now, I'm going to just keep this a number sign where a link would go. Now this, between these two quotation marks, is normally where to put a link, like home.html or aboutme.html, but I'm going to keep it a number sign just so it's a null link. Essentially, I can add the real link later, but this will let me do everything that I want to do here. Okay, so I know that if this home turned green, I'm not done yet. I've got to close this opening anchor tag, so I want to put a bracket facing this way. So I want to close the opening tag, but then I want to close the actual tag itself. So here's the opening of it. Now I need to close it, and it's going to go right after the E in home here. So I'm going to do a bracket facing to the right with a slash there, and I've just now closed that link. And if I go back to design view, you can see that it has an underline under it, and it's showing me there's text decoration on here. It's showing me that that indeed is a web link. Okay, so I'm going to go back to code view, and now I'm going to just take this anchor tag and I'm going to put it on all, kind of copy it on all these other ones because I want to go quick here. And then I'll close those all in a second. So it's all going to kind of go in here. And then I'm going to close all those here by just, all I have to do is put the bracket with a slash, and it'll automatically close it for me on each one of those items. So there I go, almost done. So now I've got all the links. So if I go to design view, they've all got underlines, they're all linked. Okay, back to code view. We're essentially done for right now with the HTML portion, and now let's talk about the CSS style, and we're going to put that up in the CSS style. So all this has been happening in the HTML area, or right in the body of our HTML, and we've made a div ID called nav, so now we have to go up here and target it in the CSS. So I'm going up in the CSS style area. All this is CSS style up here in the head tags. So I'm going to put it right here at the bottom of the CSS style. I'm going to see right before the end tag of style. See, there's where it ends. So I definitely want it after this curly bracket, this clear float that was in this template. I'm going to hit return here a few times. I'm going to start my I'm going to start that code right now. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to create my nav, just some basic nav information. So I'm going to do number sign nav. That indicates that I'm doing an ID instead of a class. I'm going to do a curly bracket facing to the right, hit return, and do a curly bracket facing to the left. So that's my declaration. So this is my selector. This is my declaration, those two curly brackets. And then I'm going to put in the value and the properties, or the properties and the value of the selector. So I'm going to say font family, and I'm going to pick one of these, maybe Arial, and so I've got font family, I've got a colon right there, and then I do the value, Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif, one of those three fonts will come up, and then a semicolon to end that one. And let's hit return and do the next one. This next thing I want to do is position. So I'm making a position of this object, and it's going to be relative. So inside the page, it's going to be relative. And I'll explain that a little bit later. And then I'm going to do width. So I'm going to make a width of the entire ID, or the div, and I'm going to make that, maybe 400 pixels wide. So 400 px, semicolon, hit return. Let's make a height to this as well. So if I start off with the HE, notice how Dreamweaver is attempting to figure out what kind of code I'm putting in here, or what kind of property I'm going to put in here. So yes, I want the height, and I'll make this an even 60 px, standing for pixels, with a semicolon. Then I'm going to hit return and do a couple more in here. I'm going to make a font size. So if I have any font in here, I want it to have a certain size. I'm going to hit return in here. I'll make this maybe, let's say 14 and semicolon. And maybe I'll have a font color in here as well. So I pick color, and then I put a colon, and then notice how the pop-out comes out, and I can pick this. So the font color on here, I'm going to make white for right now, and then semicolon, and hit return. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to margin this inside the div. So I'm going to do margin, but I'm going to margin it all the way around. So I'm going to margin, semicolon, and I'm going to do a little CSS shorthand here. So I'm going to combine all of my margins together in one line here. So I'm going to say margin, and I'm going to say 0. That'll be for the top and bottom. And then I'm going to say space. So I don't need a comma in here. So CSS shorthand, I don't need a comma. I'm going to say 0. That'll be the top and bottom. And then I'm going to say auto. So I'll type in auto, and that'll be for the left and right. This will center this div inside the content div that it's sitting in. I'm going to do a semicolon, and I'm done with that. All right, let's make our next one. I'm going to go down to the bottom of that, of this declaration, and hit return. Give myself some space here and start doing the next one. So now we're going to target the actual unordered list here, and we only have one thing that we have to do in this unordered list. So I'm going to do number sign nav with a space. So I'm saying, hey, look inside the div nav and find a UL. And so it's going to look inside there and find a UL. And I'm going to do a curly bracket to the right, hit return, curly bracket to the left, and then I'm going to hit return here. And what we want to do is we want to have a list style type in here. So list style type, and we're going to pick none. And this will get rid of the bullet points that you have. So list style type with a semicolon to end it, and that'll create no bullet points on there. All right, so that's it for that one. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to now create, this thing has been vertical so far, and I want to start talking about making it horizontal. So I'm going to add CSS code for that. So we're going to continue our nav here, number sign, nav, UL, so same thing as above, but now we're going to get a little deeper in here and now talk about the list that's in the UL. So I'm going to do a curly bracket facing this way, hit return, and I'm going to do a float in here. So I'm going to do float and then left. And as you know from some of our other tutorials, when we float a group of objects, they'll all line up horizontally. So if the first one's floated left, the other ones that follow it in the same object will be floated left. So if you're dealing with a bunch of divs, it'll work that way. And if you're dealing with a bunch of list items, they'll also do that. Okay, so we're going to float them all left, so they'll be horizontal across the page. And then here's where we're going to position them relative. So I'm going to say position, relative, and this is going to also keep them. This is going to keep them in their place as well. And I'll go back and change this later and show you some things that you can do with this. But this is going to keep it horizontal and keep all the buttons where we want them. Okay, so that's it for that one, and I'm going to put a closed curly bracket here to finish that one off. And now I'm going to add another. So we're getting a little deeper in here as we go. So now I'm going to talk about the nav, UL, list, and the anchor. So now we're getting one more deep. So I'm just going to highlight this and copy it and paste it down here. And then with a space, add an A. So now I'm saying nav, any ID that's a nav, any UL in it, any list inside a UL, and any anchor inside a list, do the following items. So I'm going to hit a curly bracket for my declaration going this way and this way, just to kind of give me, so I don't forget the curly brackets. And now we're going to do a bunch of things in here. First thing I want to do is let's display this as a block. So I'm going to display this whole thing as a block. That'll make each one of those text items that's now a link, each of them display as a box around it. So I'm going to display block. Okay, so that's the first one. And I want to align all that text in the center. So I'm going to say text dash align, and you'll see Dreamweaver will pop that up for me. I'm going to say center, and I'm going to hit return. And now I'm going to do a padding inside that box because we need some space inside there. So I'm going to do padding inside the box all the way around it for right now. So I'm going to do padding and maybe, I don't know, 20 pixels. It might be too much for right now, but I'm going to do 20 pixels and semicolon. Okay. Once I do that, I hit return. I want to have no text decoration here, so I don't want those links to have underlines on here. So text dash decoration and colon, and I want to pick none on that. So there's no text decoration, no underlines. Hit return. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure my color stays. Well, let's see. Maybe I'll make my color. Let's do a text color for that since we're on text, and I'll pick white for this. So the link color is going to be white. And while I'm here, I might as well make a background color for this display block. So I made a display block, but I probably should give them a background color. It doesn't matter what order I do this in. So I can do it right below the block, or I could just do it right below the text color. So if I hit return, look at how background color comes in, background dash color, and then I'll go here, and maybe I'll pick like a blue color, so 039, and semicolon. So I've got a background color in there. Now we could do a border on the right hand side of each one of these blocks so that they don't look all jammed together, or we can also do a margin inside each one of these, so we can have a margin around them. And so either way we can do that, and so we can have some spacing in there, and I may put that back in there later after we look at this. But let's see what we got so far. Now we see that we've got more defined boxes here, and look, they're going horizontally. Now this of course is a problem down here. I don't want these to show up. They're into the portfolio, and I want them to kind of pop out or be hidden before, so I don't see them at the start. So let's go back to code view, and we're going to start talking about the next step. Go underneath this bracket, underneath that, and we want to do number sign nav, and a space, and UL, LI, I'm getting deeper, but this time UL. So we're saying, hey, if you have an unordered list, and in that unordered list you have a list, which we do, and then in that one you have an unordered list, do something to that. So this is where we're going to hide this pull-out menu. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say display. So there we go. And I'm going to say none for that, and semicolon to end this. So display none, and this will hide our pull-out menu. Let's go look and see if that indeed happened. If I go to design view, yep, it's gone. So now it's hidden. So it's pretty nice. So home, about me, and the portfolio is hidden. Now we're going to have to make code to make it show up when we roll over it in the hover. So rollover is called the hover, so we'll get to that next. So let's do the first one. So I'm going to now talk specifically about the nav, so I'm going to do number sign, nav, and I can copy and paste if I want, UL, LI, and this time I want to do a pseudo object here, pseudo class. So on this LI, I want to talk about its hover. So I'm going to do a colon and hover. Now there's no space between the LI, the colon, and the hover. That's very important. But I want to go one step further and I want to talk about the unordered list inside. So I'm saying basically anytime you find a ULLI, you want to hover the UL. And we're going to do a curly bracket this way, hit return, and we want to display this as a block. Okay, so it stays consistent. And then I want to hit return and I want to make it position absolute. Now this is where we can get funky and change things here. If we did position relative, we could make this thing, if it was a vertical nav, we could make it look like it's expanding, like collapsible, or like a collapsible menu. So we're going to make it absolute so that the menu stays in the right spot. Maybe I'll show you that technique at the end. So position absolute, then I hit return, and I'm going to close this declaration here. And now I'm going to go down here. Right now we still can't see anything. If I go to live view, I mean I can kind of see, look, it kind of shows me this kind of thing popping out here, but it doesn't look good yet. So it's working now, right? So now essentially with the last bit of code that I did, by displaying it again, it will make it pop back out on hover over of this. So when I hover over this UL, this will pop out. Okay, nice. So let's go back to code view. And now let's make that thing look the way it's supposed to. So we want a hover style now on the hover part. So let's do this. Let's do number sign, nav. So always start with that here. UL, we know we have an unordered list, and we know we have a list inside that. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. Now I'm going to do a colon, and I'm going to talk about that hover again. And I'm going to exactly what we had before with the UL, but now we're going to take it a step further now. Well, now we're going to say, okay, any UL that has an LI in it and an anchor in it, you want to do the next bit of stuff to it, and that's our submenu. So we've got a little bit deeper here on this, and now I'm going to put my close bracket down there. And in here we'll display this block as well. So everything's kind of displayed block. So display, colon, pick block, hit return, semicolon, hit return to go to the next space. I'm going to make a different background color for these boxes that pop out. So I'm going to say background and color. And let me go pick the color. So it was kind of a blue over here. So maybe I'll make a darker blue, or maybe even a lighter blue. So I'll go over here, make a lighter blue. Okay, and then hit return. So I picked a background color. I'm going to keep my text color. Maybe I'll make it just slightly different. So I'll go color, and on that, maybe I'll do a light yellow on that, and semicolon. So that'd be the color of the text. Now let's make those blocks a certain width here. The ones on the hover. So I'm going to say width, and I'm going to make them, I want to say, well, maybe, I don't know, 80 pixels wide, 80 px, and then a semicolon. And we want to make sure that our text is aligned centered in those boxes, just like everything else. So text align, hit return, go down here, pick center, hit return, semicolon, hit return. So I go down to the next line. So I want to align all that text center. And then if I want to do borders on here again, I can do that kind of stuff. I'm going to wait on that. We might be able to put margins in there. That might be better. So here I'm getting closer now. So let's go back to design view and take a look at what this looks like. Oh, that's pretty good. Now they're a little wide right here. We want to make them maybe a little smaller. Okay, so now they're popping out. And look, they're a different color, and so is the font. Well, these are going to be better if when I hover over these, they change color, right? And these up here, so I'll switch that. But these are going to be a lot better if I hover over them and they change color. So let's go back to code view and do one last bit of code to this, and then we can go back and tweak some things. So essentially, I want almost the same thing that I have above, number sign, nav, space, ul, space, li, you're getting the hang of that, colon, hover. So it starts out the same. then I'm going to do the UL, LI, then an A. So everything's the same as above just right now, except now here's the little crazy part. After this A, I'm going to talk about the hover that's inside those. So I'm going to do, it's like two hovers going on. So I know it's a little weird, and I'm going to do the curly bracket for the declaration on both sides and hit return. So now I'm going to cover two hovers in one. So now I'm going to change the background color to each one of these. So I'm going to say background color, and maybe when I roll over them I get really a dark blue, semicolon, and I can keep, and maybe I make the text white on this. I don't know. You don't even have to change the text color of the links, but I'll just do that so we can see it. So I'll go color, I'll pick a white, and semicolon. So now let's see what we got here. If I go back to design view, I roll over that, and sure enough, I've got the pull out here with changing color on those hovers. So this is a hover here, so that hover is the first one, and then here's the second one. Okay, the width on here is a little wide, so maybe I don't need it to be that wide, maybe less than that. And maybe I want to put a little margin between these things, and maybe I want to do, let's first create hoverovers on these right here. So let's go back to code view. I'm going to scroll up here. Let's look for that first one that we did. Oh, there it is. So here's the first set that we did here. So essentially I want to do a sudo on this. So I'm going to copy this, Command C, go down here, hit return, Command V, and I'm going to do a colon and hover. So I'm going to say, hey, anytime you have a UL with a list and an anchor and it hovers over, do something to that. So I'm going to make a background color on that one. So I'm going to say background color. I'm going to go pick that same dark blue on that and semicolon, and I'm going to pick the text color. Well, I'll just keep it white, or maybe, yeah, I'll just keep it white on here. So I don't really need to change this, or I could do a gray just to show you, and then semicolon. And so now when I go back to design view, go to live view, click back on live view, and you can see that right here. Now I lost something here. Oh, I have to close this tab. Oh, see, look what happens. So if I go to live view, if I go back to design view, these are showing up here. I screwed up. I did not have my curly bracket closing right here. I got to close that, otherwise it won't work. So there we go. Everything below it wasn't then working right. So now if I go back to design view and live view, everything works all right. So now I've got the hover here, and they change color. Look, not only does the background change color, but so does the home button itself. And then when I go over to the portfolio, those change color. Pretty cool. And then I can change the width right here to this one. So I'm going to go to code view, and the width is down here, right there, 80. So let's make it maybe 60 and see how that works. Go to design view, click off live view and back on. 60 is better, so maybe 58, whatever that width is there. So I'm going to go back here and just get that lined up a little bit better. There we go. Well, not. Oh wait, go off that and back on, and it's not quite enough, but you get the idea. You can go back and change the width of that very easily. So if I wanted to go in here and then add another link to the right of home that doesn't have a pull-out menu, well, I could do that pretty easily. If I go back to code view and then I go scroll down to my HTML, if I want another link going after all of these, well, this is the sub right here. That's a sub menu. So obviously if I create another link, so let me make a copy of this home button, Command C, I would want to put that after this list right here. So I'd want to put it right after the list item that closes portfolio. So I'm going to hit return and put it there. And now when I go to design view, look at how I can easily add, and I'll change the name of that so it doesn't say home. So I can do anything else. And then when I go back to design view, live view, so I've got another item happening over to the right. So it's easy to add onto this menu and create more. And if I want to do more submenus inside of these, well, I'm not going to do that, but you'd see you just include it inside an LI. So essentially I would take a whole UL, a whole entire UL, and I would make sure that it's embedded with inside an LI. So I'll just do it. I'll copy that, and I'll go down in here, and I'm going to put it right inside this. So I'll move it down in here first. I'm going to put it inside this first. I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to take off the hello, I'm going to take off that li, and I'm going to put it down here between, right where this, because this is the sub on this now, so it has to go right after that sub. There we go. And now if I go to design view and live view, click on it, got that one and I've got that one. They're the same thing, but you see how they work now. Pretty cool. All right, so that concludes our tutorial on a horizontal CSS menu with a sub menu that pulls out. So that's a little pull out menu. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.